Empires have ruled throughout history. The Roman Empire, the British Empire, all of these examples contain one thing in common: an extensive group of states or countries ruled over by a single monarch. In a business context, it can relate to an organization with global expansion and millions of dollars brought in annually. In terms of monster trucks, there haven't been too many empires. Paul Schaefer Motorsports and Feld Motorsports, owning the entire Monster Jam fleet, are the first two that come to mind, with Monster Jam's fleet being the most well known due to them to this day owning numerous names and running 30 plus trucks all over the world. But one empire that's only just now being built up and becoming very prominent is Triple B Motorsports. In just under 3 years, the team in both fleet size and drivers has grown almost to the level of some of the biggest independent teams in the industry, and at their current rate will continue to grow over the coming years. So today, we take a look at Triple B Motorsports, a monster truck empire. The backstory behind Triple B leads to their owner, James Trantina III. Trantina's rise to success is not far off from your typical rags to riches story, where James went from at one point living in his car to owning the largest towing company in Minnesota in less than a decade. Collins Bros Towing is the umbrella company for 9 separate other towing companies operating in the state, and is James's main source of income. Around 2012, Trantina started his racing career in dirt late models, in which his team would continue to race until 2021. His start in monster trucks came with the founding of Triple B Motorsports in 2016, before shortly thereafter acquiring the Holy Roller chassis, with the truck being converted into Tarantula, which he would run himself on occasions. Later that year, however, he sold the truck, and by the end of 2016, he bought Rat Nasty, which he would run from then to 2018 before selling to the Comos. To this day, the Comos still own and run Rat Nasty at various independent events. He would host a few independent shows in the late 2010s, such as Bemidji and Elk River, featuring massive lineups of some of the top independent trucks from the eastern half of the United States. Aside from everything mentioned so far, James would largely be out of the spotlight in the world of monster trucks. For an empire to be considered, well, an empire in the context of business, you first need to build a large collection of assets, or in the case of a monster truck team, lots of trucks and lots of equipment. In mid-2021, Triple B had made their first big purchase in the world of monster trucks, acquiring the entire USA 1 operation from Everett Jasma, including the name and the 2 previously restored original trucks from 1970 and 1988, along with the haulers and merchandising rights for the truck. Jasma had quietly been ready to sell the team for 2 decades prior to the sale, but finally someone came along with the right offer. However, this was just the beginning for the team's eventual expansion. In August of 2021, Trantina purchased 3 trucks from Zebra 2, being Barely Tame, Master of Disaster, and Pretty Wicked, as well as the Master of Disaster ride truck. He would also gain the naming rights to Barely Tame and Master of Disaster. In September of 2021, the team made their return to competition at Elko Speedway for the venue's Eve of Destruction event, performing freestyle exhibitions with James behind the wheel of both USA 1 and Barely Tame, the former running on Master of Disaster. By the end of the year, Triple B Motorsports now owned 3 race trucks, 1 ride truck, 2 display trucks, being the original USA 1 trucks, and multiple haulers and other equipment for his growing team. Heading into the new year, I don't think anyone expected what Trentina was cooking up.
I keep myself pretty private, and a lot of people don't know who I am in the monster truck world. I do this as a hobby. I do this for fun. I bought the USA 1 operation from Everett Jasmer. Went on with buying Barely Tame, Master of Disaster from Zaner 2. Today, we want to make a pretty awesome announcement that we are taking over the entire Paul Schaefer operation. We're acquiring 13 trademark names, several trucks, the whole operation.
On January 27th, 2022, Triple B made their most prominent and most notable acquisition yet, buying out Paul Schaefer Motorsports. To some who are unaware of the sheer size of Paul Schaefer's operation in the late 90s and early 2000s, here's some context. Originally starting out with Monster Patrol, Paul's team would grow with the acquisition of more names and trucks. In fact, I would go as far to say that there are many parallels between Schaefer during the prime of Paul Schaefer Motorsports and Triple B Motorsports now, with Schaefer trying to acquire even more names in the late 90s, like Predator, USA 1, and yes, even the legendary Gravedigger before it was sold to previous Monster Jam owners Pace Motorsports, now Feld Motorsports. None of the names mentioned above would ever be acquired by Schaefer, but Paul's purchases in the late 90s of downsizing and retiring teams is very similar to the activity of Triple B Motorsports over the previous 2 years. In 2005 alone, the team was campaigning a total of 13 trucks, including but not limited to Frankenstein Monster Patrol, Kirk Dabney's Monster Patrol, 4 of Fred Schaefer's former Barefoot trucks, another Barefoot running an in-house chassis, 2 formerly owned trucks by 2 Extreme running the Monster Patrol and Barefoot names, the former Boogie Van, Wild Thing, Carolina Crusher, and what would become Cadaver. While Paul's fleet at this time was smaller in size than Monster Jam's, it was still the largest independently owned team in the country, and with many other teams running Paul's names on their own trucks, and with multiple different shops across the country, the scope of Paul Schaefer Motorsports was massive in its prime. However, James Trentina made an offer Schaefer couldn't refuse. With this acquisition, Trentina took possession of all of Schaefer's trucks, trailers, parts, and trademarked names, a list of iconic names including, but not limited to, Monster Patrol, Mud Patrol, Wild Thing, Oz Monster, Boogie Van, Carolina Crusher, Jesse James Cadaver, Captain USA, Overkill, Extreme Overkill, Barefoot, and Rampage. It was a lifelong dream of his to own and run these names, and he had just made the purchase of the century. In the live video leading up to the announcement of the buyout, Trentina was so incredibly happy, he looked like he could barely contain his genuine excitement. Many couldn't believe it, but it was definitely real, with 8 semis and trailers sent out to Indiana to bring home his newest acquisition. While the trucks themselves have largely outdated technology and hadn't competed in almost a decade, the fact that someone was able to purchase this team, which had quietly been for sale for almost 2 decades and was once the largest independent team in the country, is what turned heads for the fans and industry folk alike. A month later, Trentina would announce another acquisition, being both of Darren Miguez's trucks, with the names kept by Miguez. However, due to the trucks competing in Monster Jam during this time, the trucks would stay under the ownership of Miguez until the tour finished, with the trucks being delivered to Triple B in May. In the same month as the Miguez buyout, Triple B's Barefoot would debut the Dodge body that had previously belonged to Paul Schaefer, yet had never competed. In March of 2022, the new USA 1 debuted sporting a beautiful trophy truck body with the iconic white paint scheme, yet some fans were upset of the body not being similar to the classic trucks. That same month, Triple B announced the acquisition of 2 more trucks, Exterminator and Wolf's Head. However, with the names being tied to sponsors, Exterminator with the Marley Motor Oil and Wolf's Head derived from the company of the same name, the names could no longer be run. That's why in April of 2022, the team announced 2 older names would be brought back and used for these trucks. Wolf's Head became Lone Wolf, and Exterminator became Boss Gator. Boss Gator and Lone Wolf were originally names that ran in the 90s and early 2000s, so they aren't out of place among the other names the team had acquired. On May 13th and May 14th, Triple B would host 2 shows at Granite City Motor Park in Granite City, Minnesota, a venue that James Trantina owns. Trucks featured at this show were all of Triple B owned trucks, as well as Mechanical Mischief, but also included the debut of Wild Thing, which is rebranded from Oz Monster, and Jesse James Cadaver. Later in October, the Triple B team would host 2 more shows at the same venue. On June 10th, Carolina Crusher would make its competition debut on what was formerly Nitro Menace, and a month later from then, Triple B debuted Monster Patrol on July 2nd on what was formerly Jailbird. Throughout the rest of the year, the team would compete in numerous independent events and tours, such as the Monster X Tour, Monster Truck Throwdown, and the Outlaw Monster Truck Drags. Come December, 3 final surprises were in store to close out the year. USA 1 would receive a retro Chevy body, repurposed from Roger Gorge's USA 1, and just a week before that, on December 6th, Triple B announced yet another acquisition, Quad Chaos. With this purchase came the Quad Chaos and Whole Shot names, along with merchandising rights and current existing merchandise, such as the Monster Machines diecast. To close out the year, on December 29th, 2022, Triple B announced their 20th name that they had acquired, Ice Cream Man. In that deal came not just the name and body, but also 2 trucks from the Raising Cane team. By the end of the year, they owned 20 total different names and had competed with 9 of them. It was a landmark year for Triple B Motorsports, and with the new year comes new opportunities. Even just days into the new year, Triple B has continued the expansion of their fleet with 2 new drivers, former Hang Loose driver Tommy Valerone and former Monster Jam driver Joe Uri. With the rate at which the team and fleet grew in 2022, I wouldn't be surprised if more names and especially more trucks were acquired to run some of the names not yet run, such as Rampage and Boogie Van. Jack Brown has been speculated to be the new driver of Quad Chaos or Whole Shot, with Jack Brown following Triple B's Instagram page and Triple B following Brown back as well. More new designs could be on their way, considering USA 1 received yet another revamp, and trucks like Barefoot and Wild Thing using previous bodies and schemes from when they were owned by Paul Schaefer. All of this is speculative, as the future of Triple B and their expansion is still very much up in the air, but as we've seen already, anything can happen. Any organization of notable size is often scrutinized and criticized the most due to its large exposure. Even Monster Jam, the biggest and most successful monster truck promoter of all time, houses numerous Gravediggers, Max D's, El Toro Locos, among other iconic names. Depending on the time of the year, there can be 6 Gravediggers competing across the country and even internationally. Yet this global expansion has and can be seen negatively by fans who feel it is a bit excessive. Triple B Motorsports, specifically its owner, James Trantina, has had similar controversy surrounding the purchasing of so many names. Most of these people are expressing concern over James' wanton spending and potential monopolizing of the independent market. And while many criticisms ultimately amount to nothing and are just fans giving their opinions, there have been a few notable instances of, mainly, James Trantina creating controversy surrounding what he says rather than what he does. Notable controversies being with Mike Harper and Phelps Motorsport. If you recall, earlier in the year of April this past year, TNT Unfinished Business was a historic event put on by Mike Harper that featured 6 iconic trucks and drivers from the TNT Motorsports era of monster truck racing, including Gary Porter in Carolina Crusher and Mike Wine in Outlaw. When this event was first announced, Carolina Crusher was still under the ownership of Paul Schaefer, so one can assume that a deal was in place for Harper to lease the name for the show. However, before the Triple B buyout of Paul Schaefer Motorsports was announced, Mike Harper would cease to run the Barefoot and Carolina Crusher names on his own trucks, and after the announcement, Trantina would publicly criticize Mike Harper on the Throttle Out show, stating,
And as of right now, Michael Harper never had a contract on it. Michael Harper never had anything in agreement with, that's set in stone with Carolina Crusher. So until that happens, the answer right now is no.
However, this was resolved as Harper would run Carolina Crusher at TNT Unfinished Business as originally planned, and Trantina cleared up the issue in a Facebook post in May of 2022, stating that there was no issue to begin with, despite his previous statements. In a slightly different situation, the Phelps Motorsports team would be allowed to continue running the Barefoot and Monster Patrol names they had been running for 8 years, with Paul Schaefer being contractually allowed to do so. However, an incident between Phelps Motorsports and Zane Ratu's Renegade Monster Truck Tour would compromise this deal. Phelps' 2 trucks were booked for one of Zane's shows on the East Coast, yet said they couldn't make the show in time due to them waiting on engine parts. When Ratu found out that the team had showed up to a local show in Texas that same weekend, he made it very public that he was furious with their decision and accused them of not being truthful, and told Trantina that they were giving his names a bad rap. Despite having stated that the Phelps team was some of his best friends, after an extended period of time of back and forth between all 3 sides, the Phelps trucks would later appear at another independent show with the Barefoot and Monster Patrol names covered up. Driver Clint Watson, part of the Phelps team, would comment the following: "Things happened that we wish could have went different, but what it boils down to is a decision was made for the best for the future of our team and business. I don't feel the details are public business. With that being said, these past 8 years representing Monster Patrol and Forward Barefoot has been a dream for us, from our deals with Paul Schaefer to carry on the brand to the fan, friend and family base we have built, to James letting us continue to do our thing. Yeah, things didn't work out and we are accused of giving the names a bad rep, so it was best to cover the names for this last show and moved on. It was an honor to represent the brand, and we are excited for the future and for all of our fans to follow us along on this new journey." No matter who you side with in this situation, James Trantina and Triple B Motorsports would ultimately side with Zane Ratu over the Phelps team, ending their professional relationship. It goes without saying that James is not afraid to speak his mind about various issues he feels there are in the industry, for better or for worse. James is the most outspoken member of the team, and as its owner, any thoughts or opinions about the team are most often directed at him. There have also been numerous instances of both fans and industry folk clashing with Trantina on social media, whether it be someone criticizing his spending habits, the quality of his trucks, or his personality itself. leading to James often responding in a long diatribe. While James is far from the only team owner in the monster truck industry to voice their opinion online and go after critics, one might think that with the size of this team and the amount of exposure it receives, it would call for James to spend fewer time arguing with detractors and maintain a more strict professionalism online. But with someone as passionate and as opinionated as Trantina is about the industry he's in, it seems for now that this is not the case. Unfortunately, there have also been a handful of questionable safety moments involving Triple B's trucks, and while these are a result of a driver error, the Lone Wolf crash was also a result of the RAI system not being used and a piece of equipment being on the track at the wrong time. As far as James Trantina attempting to freestyle a stock pickup truck and roll it over off a bus stack, well, we can't explain that one.
What is going on? Jeremiah Craig can't get it done. James is gonna. Oh!
While it's naive to assume that just because Triple B Motorsports owns so many names and so many monster trucks that they can compete with the largest and most successful promoters in this industry, such as Monster Jam or Hot Wheels, but there's no denying that the acquisition of said trucks and names has turned the heads of almost everybody who pays close attention to the world of monster trucks. James Trantina has stated on numerous occasions that he's in the industry for the love of the sport, not for financial gain, unlike his predecessor Paul Schaefer, who was very much looking at monster trucks as a business. James has the rare privilege of having extremely deep pockets at all times, making the expansion of his team a much easier affair financially than it otherwise would be. While Triple B essentially diving headfirst into the deep end pool was an extremely difficult and unwise strategy, the team has got itself off the ground much quicker than many expected, thanks to the help of its pillars such as Rodney Tweedy and Josh Baumgartner, and it is bringing many names that would otherwise be stuck in the past to a younger audience who didn't get to grow up with them like older fans did. Many empires, especially in the early points of human civilization, eventually fade away or disband, but in today's world, empires in the form of massive corporations can last what feels a lifetime. Triple B Motorsports, in just the span of the last 3 years, has made themselves into a major force in the monster truck industry. While the team's owner has undoubtedly been controversial and their rise to prominence has been unorthodox, Triple B has also given others a chance to work in an industry many love and continues to build an exciting team and fleet of trucks. They've turned themselves from just another independent team from St. Cloud, Minnesota, to a monster truck empire. And while it's still too early to say what the team's future holds, it will undoubtedly play a major role in monster truck history. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon with some more monster truck content.